There's this new way to get AI in just about any app that you use. You can combine AI with over 5,000.
Baby, take my hand. I want you to be my husband. Kiss you, my. I see you standing there in your hot outerwear, and all I can think is where is the ring? 'Cause I know you wanna ask, scared the moment will pass. I can see it in your eyes, just take me by surprise. And all my friends, they tell me they see you're planning to get on one knee. But I want it to be out of the blue, so make sure I have no clue when you ask. Baby, take my hand, I want you to be my husband. 'Cause you're my Iron Man, and I love you 3000. Baby, take a chance, 'cause I want this to be something straight out of a Hollywood movie. Now we're having dinner, and baby, you're my winner. I see the way you smile, you're thinking about the aisle. You reach in your pocket, emotions unlocking. And before you could ask, I answer too fast. And all my friends, they tell me they see you're planning to get on one knee. So now I can't stop thinking about you. I figured out all the clues, so now baby, take my hand. I want you to be my husband. 'Cause you're my Iron Man, and I love you 3000. Baby, take a chance, 'cause I want this to be something straight out of a Hollywood movie. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. No spoilers, please. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. No spoilers, please. Baby, take my hand, I want you to be my husband. 'Cause you're my Iron Man, and I love you 3000. Baby, take a chance, 'cause I want this to be something straight out of a Hollywood movie. Baby, no spoilers, please. Ba-da-da-da-dum. No spoilers, please. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. No spoilers, please. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. And I love you 3000.
Van, beli tiket susah, panas, antrinya parah. Jangan diem aja.
Hidupku tanpa cintamu bagai malam tanpa
susah, panas, antrinya parah. Jangan diem aja dong. Ya. Gerak, cie aja lah. Cobain Sprite Zero Sugar, segernya sama, bebas gula.
Jadikan canda di keluh bersama. Terkadang-kadang mata bicara seakan-akan semua rahasia. Oh, kebodohan antara kita.
Dunia terasa
teman di ruang tengah Mizan di Cinambo. Terima kasih sekali atas kehadirannya. Juga selamat datang buat teman-teman yang menonton streaming nih di YouTube Penerbit Mizan. Selamat datang di acara sore hari ini. Kita akan ada diskusi menarik tentang Islam dan sains modern bersama para narasumber yang sangat menarik juga. Boleh buat teman-teman yang baru datang silakan diisi ya di atas ya. Terima kasih juga nih untuk para tamu undangan yang sudah datang hari ini dan menyempatkan waktu. Ada perwakilan dari UIN Bandung, dari Himpunan Mahasiswa Indonesia Cabang Bandung, dari Dema Uninus dan PMII Uninus, serta dari Masjid Salman IPB. Kita tepuk tangan dulu untuk semua yang sudah hadir pada sore hari ini. Sebelum lanjut ke diskusi yang kita tunggu-tunggu, marilah bersama-sama kita saksikan dulu nih video titik terang dari Mizan, kurator pencerahan. Silakan diisi ya. Terima kasih juga nih untuk para tamu undangan yang sudah datang hari ini dan menyempatkan waktu.
Dunia terasa gelap saat kita berada di dalam ketidaktahuan, hingga satu keingintahuan membuka pengetahuan, dan satu pengetahuan itu membuka jutaan pengetahuan lainnya.
Marilah bersama-sama kita saksikan dulu nih video titik terang dari Mizan, kurator pencerahan.
di setiap aspek kehidupan.
Menjadi perempuan seharusnya perempuan itu saling mendukung, bukan saling menjatuhkan.
Dari berbagai pemikir,
kita hanya bisa sedikit lebih baik daripada kemarin.
Dari berbagai penggagas ide yang terkurasi dari zaman ke zaman.
Bukan berarti budaya yang berbeda-beda dalam arti satu salah satu benar.
Kita harus terbuka kepada keragaman-keragaman bahasa manusia untuk menjelaskan pengalamannya ini.
To go from one idea to a new idea, you have to go through a transitional phase that's a little chaotic.
Ini semua adalah perjalanan yang menyempurnakan pemahaman dan mempertemukan dengan kebijaksanaan.
Di sini ada yang paling jauh nggak nih dari Cinambo datang ke sini? Ada nggak? Dari mana? Cimahi. Ada yang lebih jauh dari Cimahi nggak? Nggak ada ya. Tapi mungkin teman-teman yang di YouTube dari seluruh Indonesia ya, insya Allah kita akan menyimak diskusi seru yang akan dimoderatori oleh Ibu Yuliani Liputo dengan narasumber yaitu Profesor Nidhal Guessoum, seorang guru besar dari American University of Sharjah, dan juga Bapak Zainal Abidin Bagir PhD dari CRCS UGM. Langsung saja kita sambut moderator dan narasumber kita hari ini. Silakan beri tepuk tangan untuk menyambut moderator dan para narasumber. Silakan Ibu Yuli.
Udah. Ya, terima kasih Fauzia. Terima kasih teman-teman semua yang sudah sempat hadir hari ini.
Ini kopinya bawa aja Pak.
Silakan Pak Haidar dan
You can make your coffee, someone will bring it there. Yeah.
Baik ya, jadi tema kita hari ini adalah Islam dan Sains Modern.
Yeah, you can leave it there.
Ya, dalam kitab suci banyak kisah yang tidak dapat dijelaskan oleh sains sehingga ada sebagian orang yang menganggap kitab suci sebagai yang belakang. Sementara Islam sendiri mengajak pemeluknya untuk selalu berpikir menggunakan akal. Namun sisi lain umat Islam juga mengalami ketertinggalan dan kemunduran dalam bidang sains. Bagaimana menanggapi kontradiksi ini? Hari ini kita akan diskusikannya di sini bersama Bapak Profesor Guessoum dan Dr. Zainal. Saya bacakan dulu ya. The audience today is coming from some universities and also the Association of Muslim Students. I will say by saya bacakan biodata singkatnya dulu ya. Profesor Nidhal Guessoum adalah tokoh terkemuka di bidang sains dan agama, memberikan kontribusi signifikan terhadap dialog antara prinsip ilmiah dan keyakinan Islam. Lahir dan besar di Aljazair dan menempuh pendidikan sains murni dengan gelar doktor di bidang astrofisika dari Universitas California San Diego. Saat ini menjabat sebagai profesor di American University of Sharjah. Profesor Guessoum telah mendedikasikan karirnya untuk memupuk pemahaman tentang keselarasan antara sains dan Islam. Penelitiannya di bidang astrofisika berfokus pada topik seperti lubang hitam dan semburan sinar gamma. Beberapa karya yang terkenalnya antara lain Islam Contemplation dan Islam dan Sains Modern yang edisi Indonesia-nya diterbitkan Mizan pada tahun 2014. Kemudian hadir bersama kita Dr. Zainal Abidin, Direktur Konsorsium Studi Keagamaan Indonesia dari UGM, dengan gelar PhD dalam bidang History and Philosophy of Science dari Indiana University Amerika Serikat. Beliau aktif berkontribusi dalam membina pemahaman antar komunitas yang beragam. Daftar karyanya yang luas di berbagai jurnal internasional menunjukkan komitmennya untuk mengeksplorasi hubungan antara sains dan agama, kebebasan beragama, dan lanskap pluralisme di Indonesia. Baik, diskusi kali ini kita akan bagi menjadi dua segmen. Segmen pertama akan ada tanya jawab dengan Profesor Nidhal, kemudian akan diulas oleh Dr. Zainal, dan kemudian berlanjut pada segmen kedua dengan pertanyaan dari audiens. Saya akan switch dulu ya, welcome Profesor Nidhal, Dr. Zainal. Introduce you both to the guests, to the audience, and make short intro to the topic today. This session will be two segments. First segment will be session with some person, and then review by Dr. Zainal with commentary. I hope it will spark curious discussion for the second segment with questions from audience. Let's start. First, I would like to start with yourself. You have a rigorous scientific background, but also interested in investigating about relationship between science and Islam. Can you tell us more? What has inspired you to start on this topic?
So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Very happy to be here. Very happy that Mizan was the first publisher to pick up my book in the entire Muslim world, in fact, even before the Arabic translation. So I'm very happy and very grateful for that. And I'm very happy to be here and meeting non-Muslims and even non-Muslims to discuss these questions of science and religion, science and Islam. I grew up in a family that was moderately religious. We all prayed, we all fasted, we practiced Islam normally. There was no hard fundamentalist approach to Islam. Nobody in my entire extended family was Salafi, fundamentalist. We didn't have any of that. In fact, there was very strong emphasis and encouragement in learning knowledge as much as possible, especially science, multiple languages. We all grew up with at least 2 and very quickly became 3 languages, fully practiced and fully mastered at home. And so, of course, because my society and my culture is Muslim, there are some topics that are related to each other with science. So, for example, when I started specializing in astronomy and astrophysics, people were always asking me, what about the present problem, the Islamic calendar problem? You are an astronomer, you are a good scientist, you are Muslim, you understand this, you can see the difficulties and the problems. Why don't you try to solve this problem? And so I did some work. I published a book. My very first book was actually on the crescent and the Islamic calendar. And I published a number of papers in different languages, organized conferences, participated in conferences. And then I started to see that the topic of Islam and science is not limited to astronomy. There are many other topics, particularly biology, the theory of evolution, but genetics, anthropology, the evolution of humans, consciousness, mind, belief, spirituality. How does this relate to science? Does science have some rule for this or not? How can we be a modern scientist and still think that there is another dimension, a spiritual dimension? There is a God, there is meta, whatever, something. Can these things be made to harmonize? My favorite word is to try to harmonize. And then, of course, I started to realize that we need a little bit of philosophy of science, a little bit of history of science, and understand what is this methodological naturalism, and what is this falsifiability and this repeatability. If you're going to really discuss science, especially modern science, in relation to religion in general and Islam in particular, you need to really dig a little bit deeper, both into the science and its philosophy and history, and also into Islam, its theology, exegesis, what does the Quran say, how can we interpret, is there a way to go beyond the old classical interpretations? So I started to realize that there is a lot of work to be done here, and to be honest, I wasn't very happy with the books that existed on this topic. And so I decided that I think I need to write my own book. So that's how I came to this Islam's quantum question. But it's really sort of an attempt to find harmony, if possible, between modern science with all its characteristics and Islam in whatever definition of Islam we adopt. So I quickly realized that Islam is not a simple, clear definition. There are many different ways of understanding Islam. And so what is the reasonable understanding of Islam that will work best with this correct, rigorous understanding of modern science? So that's how I get to this topic.
Zainal bisa menanggapi banyak sobat
Yeah, probably my own experience encountering your book. I think what is special about it, where previously many of the discussions on Islam and science were done not by scientists themselves, I mean Muslim scientists themselves. Only later, I think, well in the past, I mean like the discussion about Islamization of knowledge or a series of books published in 1980s, 1990s. Most of them, they are not written by scientists themselves, but only later. And I think this is a very interesting trend, that only later some Muslim scientists, they are also interested on this issue. Well, I can mention only like from Iran, President Guessoum, and then from France, Bruno Lidoni, and then yourself. If we look at the discourse on religion and science in the Western world, in Europe and the US, I think since the beginning, it was scientists who then studied theology, for example, who are interested on this issue and then take up this topic. So I think there are these different kinds of literature on Islam and science. One is written by people who are not scientists, including myself. I'm half scientist. Yeah. And then the scientists, I mean practicing scientists, doing research on astrophysics, and I think Mehdi Gozani is also physicist. Yeah. And then they are interested to. So I think that point is very interesting. Why that is interesting? Because for the with the practicing scientists, they I think they know science not in abstracts, but in day-to-day practice. Yeah. And that gives a different color to the literature.
Yes.
Okay. Saya rasa teman-teman bisa mengikuti dalam bahasa Inggris. Baik, saya rasa teman-teman bisa mengikuti ya dalam bahasa Inggris, jadi tidak perlu diterjemahkan mungkin ya?
Bisa.
Oh, bisa. Okay. Next, on the first chapter of this book, Islam and Modern Science, you recount a story about a symposium on Islamic science in Kuwait, where you were shocked to see that many of the papers presented were on the topic that sounds like pseudosciences, such as trying to explain miracles scientifically or Quranic medicine using water, memory, etc. And you argue that this is a reflection of the current state of science and religious education in Muslim country. Can you elaborate more about this? What is Islamic science, if there is such a thing? And then, is there something missing in the education of science and religion in our school that resulted in such perception and misconception about science, Islamic science?
So there are different meanings to this expression Islamic science. The simpler and more acceptable meaning of Islamic science is the science that was practiced and developed during the Islamic civilization, the Golden Age. And that is fine, okay, Islamic science. The science that was practiced for several centuries, up to maybe 1,000 years, by Al-Biruni, Ibn al-Haytham, etc. And it was during that time. And then we look at it, what kind of science, how did they do their science, what was correct about it, what was erroneous, and so on. And there is no problem with this. Then there are other definitions of Islamic science, including Dr. Bagir mentioned a moment ago this Islamization of science, which started in the early 1980s, where some Arab Muslim philosophers started to claim that Western science is ideologically loaded, and so you have to be careful with what you take from the West, and we have to at least filter it with the Islamic lens, if not rewrite it and take what is acceptable Islamically and what is not acceptable we throw away. Islamization of science. And there's a whole debate, and this more or less, except maybe in this region, fortunately, Indonesia a little bit and Malaysia, does not exist anymore elsewhere. People have just dropped it. This doesn't work, doesn't make sense, so let's put it aside. Then there is Islamic science, which claims that modern science is too secular. Secular meaning it has removed religion, God, spirit, spirituality completely, and does science in complete disconnection from everything religious and spiritual and divine. And we must, according to this school of thought, we must merge them back. And so Islamic science then becomes the modern science where we infuse it with religion, spirituality. We cannot leave out considerations of divine intervention, miracle, angel, spirit, demon, jinn, all of that has to go together. So these are some of the, there are other versions, but these are the main sort of meanings or trends in what is known as Islamic science. And then when you see what is being done in the name of Islamic science, you realize that it is a double corruption. It's a corruption of the science itself. That these people really don't understand science, don't know how science works. They do wrong science, pseudo-science, and a corruption of what the Quran and Islam really stand for. Meaning, the Quran was never meant to be something that you read and then it goes into the water. And believe me, this is a real example. People claimed that if you read Quran over some water, and then if you take this water and give it to your even grandmother who's not even here, and she drinks it, she may be cured from some diseases. And I say this is a corruption of the Quran. This is not what the Quran is about. The Quran is a divine guidance. It tells you why you are here, what happens to you after you die, how you should live with other people, and how you should be conscious at all times of the existence of God, and He is there. That's Islam in a nutshell. It's a guidance to humans. Now, some of the philosophers claim that we can reach these truths or these ideas even with our reason, but most people cannot reach these truths by their reason, and so there is a message that tells them, here's why you were created, here's what happens to you after you die, here's what you should do during your life, etc., etc. That's what the Quran is about. Quran is not read it over some water and then take the water somewhere, or the Quran is going to be connected with some jinns or something, and if there is somebody who is sick and is having some seizures, let's say, then I bring now some special verses, and I say also these are recipes. They become like special recipes. You have to read these verses over this person, otherwise it will not work. I say, why this verse? Why? Why you have to read this verse? So it becomes like a recipe. This verse is good for this. This verse is good for this. This verse does this. And actually, when you do, modern experimentation, double blind, and all of that, and you find that there is nothing there is zero effect. There is zero net effect. This is why I say this is a double corruption of both the science itself, misunderstanding and using it wrongly, and the Quran and Islam religion. So this Islamic science or Islamization of science, I think, is wrong on multiple levels.
Okay. My question is related to education of Muslim at school. Probably something wrong in our
Microphone.
Sorry. Related to that, is there something that is wrong in the way we teach science and religion at school that resulted in such a corruption?
Yeah. So I don't know of real examples or real cases where these kinds of examples that I just gave are actually taught in school, but I know countless examples or cases where the so-called i'jaz ilmi, meaning where people claim that there are many verses in the Quran that contain some recent discoveries of science, and this then becomes a scientific miracle of the Quran. And this is taught in many, many schools, at many, many levels, including universities. I know of PhD theses that have been written on this. And I say this is a destruction of the even principles of education, where the first principle of education is to be able to think for yourself, is to be able to do critical inquiry, is to be able to read text, to analyze, to compare, to etc. And it doesn't take very much work to go through these examples. I have a whole chapter on it in the book. But I think it's really not very hard if you are rigorous and objective and you are willing to spend a few weeks doing some research on these examples that are claimed that the genes are in the Quran, the black holes are in the Quran, the pulsars are in the Quran, and so on and so forth. And you go and analyze the verses, analyze the science, analyze what these people have written about these verses and how they understand the science. You quickly realize that they really don't understand. And so you are really claiming things on the Quran on the basis of actual ignorance. And this is dangerous. To pass it on to students is very dangerous.
Yeah. Please, Mr. Zainal, can you give some commentary about the Islamization of science?
Yeah, I think, well, probably we should also try to understand the motivation. Why do people do that? Including, I mean, this movement on Ijaz Ilmi, which probably that's not productive, but people do it.
Yeah, a lot.
And we need to understand why, what motivates them. And I will say, to understand that trend, we need to go back in history to the time when in the 18th, 19th century, most of the Muslim world were colonized, mostly by the Western power, who excelled in science and technology. And then the reaction, and I think everywhere in the world, including in Indonesia, I mean the ulama, the Muslims in general, Muslim scholars, they tried to respond to that in different ways. Some totally reject that because that's considered as part of the Western kafir, etc. Others, they totally embrace it because they see power in science and technology, uncritically embrace it. I think others try to appropriate that just to make them feel good. And I think this is the example which you gave by saying, well, all those things, theories in science and technology, we already have it. Either we had it in the past, in our history, so everything can be traced back to our history, to the past golden age, for example, or we have it in Quran or in Sunnah, basically just simply saying there's nothing new in this modern science and technology, but they also don't do much. Just to make them, I think that is just to make them feel good. It's not productive, but it makes them feel good. I think these are some of the motivations. And then, of course, there are groups who try to, who struggle seriously. I think it's very understandable. I mean, if you live in the 19th century, we have, the so-called Muslim reformers, whether that's Jamaluddin al-Afghani, Syed Ahmad Khan in India. I think they are among the scholars who try seriously to struggle with this question. How do we respond to this with different answers? As a matter of fact, if you look at the history of the establishment of Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama in Indonesia, that's in early 20th century, one of the central issues was actually that. We have the traditional education, religious education, and then there is this new modern educations of modern sciences, mathematics, etc. And I think it's an honest worry, probably not worry, an honest struggle. How do we make sense of it? How do we respond to it? So Islamizations of knowledge, etc. These are, I think, some of the more recent responses to that. But why I said we need to go back to the history, because probably we should also understand the motivations and the root of this kind of movements. I think it is about how do we Muslims gain a better position in the world. So I think when you look at these different responses, well, probably I should rephrase it. How do we gain a better position again in the world authentically? I mean, while preserving our traditions, etc. So many of the responses to modern science, I think, come back to that. And if we understand the main question, then we can also try to judge the success of these responses. So this trend, I mean, like just for example, in the miracles of scientific miracles of the Quran or whatever, does it give the right answer to that question? I mean, does it bring us to a better position in the world? I mean, in terms of science and technology? No. So I think that's not the right answer. So I think you can ask each one of these trends whether they respond to that problem well, and the success or not depends on that, on the answer to that question. And I think also the trend like Islamizations of knowledge, it's about authenticity. They want to preserve authentic Islamic values. But then I think one of the important questions is also whether it has been successful to develop science in the Muslim world. If not, then it's not successful then. So I think that's also the questions we can ask to you.
Yeah, I can see your point of view. I don't disagree, but I think if you tell people, look, your i'jaz ilmi is not successful because it hasn't made us more scientifically and technologically powerful, and we are not reaching on a par with the developed nations, they would say, it's not because i'jaz ilmi is wrong, it's because we have corrupt rulers, it's because we have, you know, colonialism did this, and imperialism, and the Americans, look what they do, and whatever. So they will always find another reason to explain why we have not developed, and in the meantime, they are still doing this i'jaz ilmi, and as I said earlier, they are inflicting this reasoning or this approach to the students, and so instead of moving forward, we're still moving in the same circle of, are there scientific facts and theories in the Quran, yes or no, and then we are always sort of doing what I call linguistic forensics. You know, what this word means, or go back to the old books, what this word, you see, if you interpret this word like this, and then instead of mastering the science and the technology, we're spending our time trying to figure out what this word could mean. Because some people bring me some verse and they say, you know, this refers to pulsars. And I say, how does it refer to pulsars? I'm an astrophysicist. I should know what pulsars are. Where do you see pulsars in this verse? They say, if you take this word and you go back 1,000 years ago, this word used to be used to mean this. And so if you combine it now with another verse, which means this. And so we're doing, I call it algebra with the Quranic verses. Take this verse, mix it with this verse, divide by this verse, multiply by 2, and you get some result. And I say, this is the science education we want to do? Train the students to do this linguistic forensics? So we need to stop that methodology, whether it's successful or not. We know it's not successful. But as I said, if we try to argue with them on the basis of success, they will find some other arguments to explain why it is not successful. And then we will not have defeated this methodology of Islamization, of i'jaz ilmi, of pseudo-science and Islam. That's the problem.
Yeah. So if I may ask a question. Yeah, I mean, like in your case, but do you, can you accept the concerns about two things? And I think this is the concerns which are, I mean, very prevalent among these movements, which we need to address. Otherwise, they will going on with that. Yeah. First, that modern science and technology, I think we cannot help by saying, I mean, this is Western. I mean, it was developed, right? Even until today. And that it may have some impacts or in terms of values, etc. And then secondly, that Muslims also have concerns about preservation of their lifestyle, values, etc.
Yes.
So these are the two worries. Yes. I don't know, how would you respond
totally
to that?
understand and totally sympathize with these two worries. And so let's address them briefly, both. The first one is, yes, this modern science started in the West, for sure.
Yeah.
The scientific revolution occurred in Europe in the 17th, 18th century, and then it exploded in 19th and 20th century. For sure, in the West, mostly. Then it went to America. Now, however, it has become universal. Now, China today produces as many, if not a little bit more, papers than the USA altogether. So it's no longer a Western. It started and was for several centuries, yes. Now, does it carry an ideology or a certain mindset, worldview? The answer is yes, to some extent, because modern science, why do I keep insisting on modern science, even in the title of the book? Because modern science is when scientists said, we must not invoke, bring in spiritual, non-physical factors into our considerations. In other words, somebody is having a seizure here, and I ask you, Zainal, what's happening to him? Now, if you say, well, there's a jinn, something, and she says, no, he has an electric problem in the brain, and we need to give him some medication. She is modern science approach. You are non-modern science approach, because you brought in some factors that are not physical. You said jinn.
Yeah.
And she said electrical problem. Now, is it okay? That's the big question of my entire book and my entire last 20 years. Is it okay to do science without bringing in God, spirit, spirituality, anything non-physical, while still believing? Is it possible to do this? That's the big question. And that's where we can have debates and we can have discussions. And there are, as I said, some major thinkers who say, no, we cannot do that. You have to mix them. So, which means what? Which means you refuse modern science. You do not accept modern science to be done in disconnection. The second issue is, yes, do we, and this is related to what I just said, do we want to preserve our identity, our culture? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is richness in our culture and many other cultures. So again, what is the solution to preserving your culture, preserving even your beliefs, but at the same time doing science in a rigorous way? This harmonization is the difficult equation. And I think, so I fully sympathize, but I think the solutions that they have proposed are wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Moving away a little bit from the topic of science, and most of our audience here is young people.
That's good.
Yeah, you mentioned in your book that you dedicated this book for your two children, hoping that it will help them develop an authentic modern identity without dilemma, contradiction, and crisis.
My two sons and their generation.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I said.
So
not
this
just
is
my
the generation. Yeah.
All of them. My book is dedicated to my two sons and their generation.
Okay, so I think that is the challenge for young Muslim today, that staying true to their faith, living in the modern world.
Yes.
And many Muslims today young Muslim, are attracted to books that promote new atheism, glorify science, like those written by Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, and many others. So my question, what can young Muslims do to stay true to their faith while living in the modern world? And what resources they can use? Because not many such popular book that counsel them that they can read.
The first thing to realize is that modern science, no matter how far and how deep you master it, will not lead you rigorously into atheism or into belief. We need to disconnect this. So the Richard Dawkins, the Steven Pinker, and Richard Harris, and all of those people, they are making a jump. They are the other pole to the Islamization. It's the other pole. It's like science leads you to atheism. And here they're saying science Islamized. And I am saying science should be understood in its own right as a process, as a method to understand the physical world around us. But science, no matter how deeply you go and advanced and sophisticated, and trust me, I have published more than 100 papers in astrophysics, does not allow you to make this leap, this jump to there is no God, there is no spirit, it's all matter, it's all materialism. This jump is ideological. This is the most important idea you need to understand. Don't be afraid of science, I tell my students. Don't be afraid of science, as long as you realize that science, if somebody starts to say, okay, atheism now, you say, oh, wait, you've made a non-scientific jump. Non-scientific. You have a materialistic philosophy, you have an atheistic ideology, whatever you have, you're free. I tell people are free. I don't say kill him or anything like that. Whatever you believe, that's fine. But don't tell me, and don't try to convince anyone that this connection is a logical connection and conclusion. This does not flow from this. So this is the first thing we need to understand. Secondly is, what is the nature of religion in general and Islam in particular? So what is it? Okay, leave science alone on the side, and we can discuss it and understand how does science function, what it is trying to tell me, do I trust what it tells me, is it established, are there facts in science, what does it mean that there are theories, can I just say I don't believe this theory, it's a theory, what does theory mean? All of this we can do and we should do. But at the same time, all of you, your generation, and this is what I told my two sons, by the time you are 25 or 30, it must be very clear in your mind what religion and Islam are. What do they tell you? What do they ask of you? What do they represent for you? If you understand, and I said very briefly earlier, religion in general and Islam in particular is a guidance for humans. Now, you can bring in ideas, and there are many philosophers, Ibn Sina, Al-Farabi, great philosophers of the Muslim golden age, civilization, who said the main ideas and the main truths of religion / Islam can be arrived at by reason. And then, what do we say? Okay, so we don't need religion because reason can get me all the facts and all the truths? No. We say not everybody has the mind of Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi. Not everyone. Most of us need a little bit of clarity, a little bit of guidance, more or less. Some need a lot. Some people, look, I don't want to think too much, it's too complicated, just tell me what I should do and what this means. And you say, okay, read the book, try to understand, talk to the Imam, who will tell you more or less what your life means, why you are here, who is God. Who is God? I have several pages in the book. Who is God? Who is Allah? So we need to explain to people. But that's the problem with our education system. It never, to my knowledge, at least in the part of the world where I live, in most of the Arab world, and I have lived in several Arab countries, and I have traveled from Japan to Brazil, in very few, if any, places, They take students and explain to them what is religion, what is the main idea, what is science, what is the relation between them, are they completely separate, are there bridges, are there places where they meet and they talk to each other, are they completely independent, can we integrate them, should we integrate them? That's your job as youngsters, you young generation, like my two sons. Your job is to achieve clarity. It's not going to be in a few weeks or a few months, and it's not going to be by just reading one book. It will take some time to think and ask questions and go to people, but as I said, by the age of 25, 30, you should achieve clarity. What is science, what does it do, and where can I accept it and not accept it? And what is religion, Islam, and what does it say? And is there any individual freedom in here that I can think for myself, or everything is set, you just have to take it and finished, and how do they read it?
Okay, how about new atheism, according to you, Pak Zainal?
Well, I agree 100% with what Professor Guessoum said. Actually, rather than I repeat that, I would be interested to hear what others hear.
Yeah. Okay. Mau translate maksudnya? Mau translate sama?
No, I mean the audience, what they think about that. So yeah, probably it's good to have conversation.
Iya, teman-teman ada yang bisa mengomentari tentang apa yang disampaikan Pak Profesor Nidhal tadi. Pada usia 20-25 tahun, teman-teman di usia generasi yang berusia segitu bisa memahami dengan jelas apa yang bisa dilakukan dengan sains, apa yang bisa batasnya dengan agama. Ada yang bisa komentari? Salim?
Ask anything, even different topic, different question. Ask whatever is on your mind. This is your chance. Yes, please.
We have one question from YouTube.
Or from YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah. Ahmad Fatahillah Mursyid bertanya, for both speaker, if you have to pick one issues in science, which one do you think the hardest to reconcile with Islam, and why? One issue in science that is the hardest to reconcile with Islam.
Yeah, I think it's human evolution.
Human evolution.
Yes. If we accept and if we really do the homework, you really have to do the homework. You can't just read a few pages here or listen to a few videos here. Evolution in general, Darwin's evolution, although Darwin, now we have progressed so far after Darwin. Darwin never heard of genes, never heard of mutations, never heard of sexual selection, all kinds of ideas that are now integral part to biological evolution. Darwin never heard of. But in general, for simplicity, we say Darwin's evolution. You need to go and really understand, study how does this Darwin evolution work, what is the evidence supporting it, and two, how does it apply to humans? Where are the humans in this general theory of evolution? That's why I called it human evolution. Once you start to understand what is this human evolution, what is the evidence for human evolution, and by the way, people start jumping up and down the fossil record, look at these skulls, the heads that have been found, which go back to tens and hundreds of thousands of years, blah, blah, blah. I tell people, you haven't been doing your homework, because the strongest evidence for biological evolution in general and human evolution in particular today is genetics. It's in the genetics. The fossils are good, and trust me, there's good fossil record. There's all kinds of other evidence in support for evolution, including human evolution. But genetics, you go and analyze what we know about genetics, the genome of humans, and now we have the genome of many animals, and you start comparing and understanding what has happened. Once you understand all of this, then you ask yourself, so where is Adam here? Where is Adam? And that's the big question. That's the hardest question. I'm not saying it is not possible to answer it. I'm saying that's the hardest question. Where is Adam? Because if you read the Quran, Allah is saying, I created Adam, and then from Adam, Eve, and then they had children, It seems as though the Quran and God are talking about a specific human being called Adam. One guy, Adam. Is it possible that this guy, Adam, was not alone? Is it possible that the concept of creation, I created Adam, does not mean out of the blue? One day there were only animals, and then all of a sudden there's this person in the middle, like came out of the blue, really, from out of space and time, out of the blue. Is it possible? Or maybe Adam was part of a whole generation of early humans, the hominids, and then evolved to a point that they started to be able to communicate with God, to have spirituality, to receive revelation, meaning to receive guidance from God. Is it possible? Does it necessarily mean that Adam was alone when God created him? Why do I say creation is not necessarily out of the blue? Here's what I tell my students, and I teach astronomy and physics and space science and all these topics. But when I teach astronomy, so I tell them, do you all understand by now, after we have spent like a week explaining the solar system? Please follow. The solar system. The formation of the solar system from a big cloud, we call it a nebula, and then there is some physical process, which I don't have time now to explain, and then a sun emerges in the middle, and then planets start to form around, including planet Earth, and then between 10 and 50 million years later, something hits the Earth and it produces a moon. So there is a whole process with different milestones. Everybody following? Yes? Then I ask my students, you know that God in the Quran says, I created earth, the heavens and the earth. The heavens meaning everything above, all the planets and stars. Yes? And created the earth. Do you understand by that God created earth like this, out of the blue? Like one day there was nothing and the next day there is a whole planet earth? Nobody says yes. Everybody says, no, earth, yeah, no problem. It formed gradually, took millions of years to form, and then later it developed an atmosphere, and then water was brought in by the comets and the asteroids, and because we happen to be in the right habitable zone, this water became liquid, and this liquid water was very conducive to the development and emergence of life, etc. All of this, every student I have taught in the last 30 years accepts without problem. And I say, and this is okay with God created earth, yeah? Yeah. Why is it okay? They say, because creation doesn't mean out of the blue. Okay, wonderful. Then why don't you apply the same idea to Adam? Just like earth took some time to form, and earth, let me tell you, and the whole solar system, including the sun and all the planets and the moon, formed 9 billion years after the creation of the universe. 2/3 of the history of the universe did not have Earth and the sun and the moon. So, why is this okay with you that Earth was created much later and through a gradual process? But it is not okay with you that humans were created also much later and through a gradual process. So, I have my own explanations, but this is the hardest question. The people have difficulty accepting this idea of human evolution and Adam is the first prophet, so they're going to say, Adam is the first prophet, how can you say that? And I say, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. The first person to communicate with God, what's wrong with you? I'm saying the same thing. But you think that he's the first prophet means he's some sacred person, I don't know how he existed, very different from everyone. I say, no, it's the first person to communicate with God to receive guidance. What's wrong with that? I'm saying the same thing you are saying. But I am putting it in a longer context. This is, by the way, if you Google later, you will find now there is, for the last 20 years, a whole development in science called big history. Big history. Big history means you describe the history of the universe and the solar system and the earth and life and humans all in a long sequence. Big history. All they follow, and it's beautiful, wonderful. And Adam is somewhere there. And that's it.
So it's interesting to say that Adam is not the first human, but the first human that receive guidance.
Yes.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Dr. Zainal, because the question is for both of you, the most difficult to reconcile with Islam?
The question is most difficult issue, or yeah. I would say two.
Okay.
Yeah. No, in terms of theory, I agree. I think it's the theory of evolution. Why? And I think that is very challenging. Well, many people, scholars, historians, including philosophers, would say that evolution was what makes atheism possible. It's not identical with atheism, but you know, the idea, the imaginations that we don't need God had been there for a long time. Laplace, I think that was in 18th century.
19th century.
19th. 19th century, yeah. And then, but when Darwin has this theory, it has the power to substitute the explanation about many things without any reference to God. So I think it's true. It makes atheism possible. So, and no wonder, I mean, the neo-atheists, which you mentioned, many of them actually refer back to the evolution. And then also probably the strongest resistance toward atheism, materialism, etc. Well, in the Muslim world, it's Harun Yahya, and he's very popular, and he's anti-evolution. So, but I think both, they have the same logic, the neo-atheists and Harun Yahya, because they make that jump from what the theory says to the philosophical, theological conclusion. Yeah. So I think both are not justified, and you don't need to reject evolution to maintain your belief. Yeah. But if you want to, I hope I'm not being misunderstood. But if you want to be a scientifically responsible atheist, then evolution will help you.
Yes.
But you don't have to be. Well, you may become atheist for different reasons, right? But
that's usually what happens, and then people find justification in some science or whatever, and they say, "You see, this is why my atheism is correct." But that's not why you became an atheist.
Yeah. So the motivation may be something else, but then it's justified.
Yes.
And evolution help in that sense. But secondly, if we don't speak about theory, but in general about modern science, I think one of the challenges is the dominance of the epistemic or epistemological dominance of modern science. That this is regarded as the most reliable, most valuable kind of knowledge, which I think it's not. I mean, it's probably the most powerful. So, but many people, most powerful in terms of making predictions, creating technology, giving you, I mean, wide understanding about so many things, natural phenomena, that's right. I mean, it's powerful in that sense. But I think you should not mistake power with other things, with quality, with depth, with reliableness, etc. I want to compare, I mean, when I say other types of knowledge, that would include, for example, literature, art, or in social science, for example, anthropology. I mean, they are not exact. I mean, you cannot, all anthropologists probably, they even disagree with the definitions of culture, their main subject. But, I mean, that kind of study, I think it gives us richness, I mean, depth, which are very valuable. But nowadays, including arts also, literature, they are not well regarded in many places, even in education, because of the dominance of modern science, which is thought as this is the main thing, the most important thing. So I think we have to be more balanced in that sense. And I think many parents would be happy if their children go to, study science, engineering. Yeah. But if they want to be an artist, for example, no. It's doubtful profession.
I had a physics teacher, high school teacher once. I was explaining what you just said, and he said to me, "You want me to tell my son that it is okay to major in history?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I wish we had great historians, more great historians. What's wrong with you? If your son is really passionate about history and is going to do great historical work, then it would be a crime to discourage him from doing that and send him into engineering and be a mediocre engineer." But that's the mindset. Like history and literature and art are way inferior compared to engineering and medicine and all that.
Although in fact, they are very important to help us answer the questions about what it means to be humans, for example, which is, of course, an important question.
Oke, kita punya waktu 10 menit lagi ya. Just 10 minutes left for our time.
Really?
So, ya, ada pertanyaan silakan dari floor. Langsung aja.
Ada dua.
Ini aja. Oh, bisa.
Thank you. My name is Salim. I'm from Masjid Salman ITB, the first campus mosque in Indonesia. My question is, there are several scientists, I don't know how many of them, who develop interest in, Muslim scientists, who develop interest in researching natural objects that were mentioned frequently in the Quran. Like honey, the bees, the ant, or even maybe not so frequent but are mentioned like banana. How do you view this trend? Does it encouraging science development in the Muslim world, or inhibits it, or I don't know? How do you view that? Maybe the second thing is not a question, but it's a comment from me.
Sure.
It seems that like Mr. Zainal Abidin Bagir just said that there is imbalance in or the dominance of scientific epistemology to other kind of epistemology that you just did in explaining how we should interpret the evolution, but by doing what you just by explaining the way you did, explaining evolution, you bring the creation, the concept of creation in Quran closely to the concept of evolution. So I don't know, is it some kind of appropriation of a Quranic interpretation into the science way of viewing the creation, or is it not gitu? Well, it's just my comment. You don't have to really answer it, but the first one is the question: how do you view that kind of trend? Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, both your question and your comment, which was also a sort of question, are both brilliant. So let me try to address the first one first, and then maybe if you allow me, I can comment a little bit on the second one. The first one is, as long as we understand that honey, the bees, bananas, whatever, the palm trees, whatever is mentioned in the Quran, and tons that is not mentioned in the Quran, is part of the physical world. Yes? The bees are part of the physical world. They are animals. The honey is a product of the bees. The bananas are fruits. Palm trees are trees. Yes? And if I'm reading the Quran and it inspires me to go and find out more about how the bees work, how the banana develops, what is the biology, agricultural process of the palm tree, then fantastic, fantastic. You know, there are scientists who say, you know the theory that I came up with, you know where I got that? It was in a dream. I say, yeah, no problem, good. So I had a dream and then it occurred to me that, oh, I know, that molecule should be made like this. And then if I go now and try to connect it with some other molecules, it will fit now. But that idea I got in a dream. Or I got that idea by reading some literature or something. Inspiration can come from anywhere, and I wish people get inspiration from the Quran, but then you have to go and do your science. You can't just say, oh, I read the verse, so I know how the bees work. Say, how do you know? What do you mean you know? You have to go and study them, and you have to observe them, and you have to take data, and then you have to compare, and then you have to check later. So if you're getting inspiration, and then you're doing the science rigorously, all power to you. Bravo. Very good. I don't have any problem. So as long as people understand that this is just the inspiration stage, which, as I said, can come from literature, can come from a dream, can come from anywhere, but then you have to do the science properly. I don't have a problem. The second issue is, I said earlier, my attempts, and this is my proposition, I'm not saying I am absolutely right and everybody else who has talked about Islam and science is wrong. I'm saying this is my proposition, I'm convinced of it, I am offering it in book, in videos, etc. If you find it useful and helpful, good. If you find that, I'm not so convinced, go and develop some more. So, what is my proposition and what is my contribution? I think that if we understand the science properly, and then we have some religious concepts like creation, like death. What is death, by the way? There is a whole science of what is death. Death is no longer a moment, by the way, just between parentheses. Death is a process. We can't say at any moment, almost at any moment, dead. Now scientists are talking about people coming back. You know what is the record of people having stopped their heart and their brain functioning? How many hours? And then they get resuscitated, is the medical term. The record now is 18 hours. Can you believe that? 18 hours. Completely gone. In the old days, would have been buried already. But this person, back. So, was he dead and came back? Or was he not dead? What is the definition of dead? You get my point? There is a whole science on evolution, formation of the earth and the sun and the moon, death, the whole science of death, and then there are religious concepts. If I can now reinterpret creation or death in the religious scripture or text to be more in phase, more harmonious, harmonized, then I think everybody wins, like good, no? But if you find it not convincing, then I would be delighted if you go and do some more thinking and some more research and you come up with another idea that is even better than mine. That's how human thought progresses. Nobody has the final word on anything. Certainly not me.
Well, probably I'll try to be quick. But I think I will take what you say about evolution earlier. Well, we read the Quran. Of course, we have background knowledge. It can be poor, bad. It can be good, good quality knowledge. Where does that knowledge come from? It can come from anywhere. It can come from reading literature. It can come from understanding history. It can come from scientific theories. So if I have that kind of knowledge, why not using it to help me read the Quran, for example? And I would say, and evolution is very, well, widely accepted theory. It's still developed, etc. It may change this aspect, that aspect of the theory, but if I have that knowledge, that could help me read the Quran deeper, I think. I want to give an analogy. I don't know whether it makes it easier or more difficult to understand. But in the field of social science, for example, you have Abdullahi an-Naim, from Sudan, who wrote the book on Islam and secular state. And he is for secular state and he is for Sharia at the same time. But he wants to read Sharia using the framework of human rights, constitutionalism, and citizenship, equal citizenship. You may ask him, doesn't that mean that you subvert the Quran using these Western ideas of human rights, constitutionalism, etc.? Well, his answer will be, first of all, these are not Western. I mean, there can be debate about that. And then secondly, he will use this understanding about human rights, about constitutionalism, to help him understand Sharia, read Sharia better. And I think we need to understand religion using all humanly possible knowledge.
Tools,
The best knowledge which we have. Again, I don't know whether that analogy works or not, or make it more difficult. But yeah, I think I mean, the main thing is that it's impossible to read things, to interpret, to understand Islam with blank mind, from a vacuum. So the question is whether your background knowledge is of high quality or low quality.
Is helpful or not?
Helpful or not,
Masih ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman? Satu lagi ya, terakhir mungkin. Ya. Tolong dibantu, Pak.
Ya, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Introducing, my name is Hazana Fadila Nurrahmah. Last year, I emailed you, Professor Nidhal Guessoum. My thesis about Islamic cosmology, which use your translated book from Mizan, and finally, few months after that, I already graduated from ITB, Bandung Institute of Technology. Jazakallah khair for your book and response.
Thank you. Thank you.
After that, I am joining Human Crescent Observation Research, aka Rukyatul Hilal, with Buska Observatory in Lombang, still ongoing. And on 13th of November, we'll execute the Jumadil Ula observation. Then I knew that Professor Guessoum is an expert who proposed the Bizanal Islamic calendar in Turkey Conference 2016. Thus, my question is about Tafsir Ilmi method with the multi-level interpretation principle, which written in your book. You said that each person, according to their intellectual level, will get a different meaning of the Quranic verse. This scientific activity is one way for us to worshiping Allah, and then gives birth to science whose foundation is from Islam but applies universally. So, as an astronomer, do you agree that after studying about rational science, we must understand the Kauniyah first about Hilal and universe cosmology, like we must study about Quran, tafsir Quran, ilmu hadis, or we just make the scientific observation and then throw it to the ulama or fuqaha to apply it in life? Does it mean we must take a double degree in natural and religious science? Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure I understood all of it, so if you can maybe just the latter part. So she's asking, I wasn't clear if you wanted me to talk about the Islamic calendar or you wanted me to talk about the Islam and cosmology. And
I think the last question is more probably about education.
General, yeah.
So do you study astronomy and then you show the results to the ulama to apply that, or you yourself need to have also more knowledge about religion? Is that
about tafsir, Quranic tafsir, and
so
ilmu
probably
hadis?
In terms of education, you should get a double degree in astronomy and
not really,
tafsir.
but okay, I get your question. Thank you very much. So let me address these two examples, Islamic calendar and cosmology, both of them. So in the Islamic calendar, I tell students and I tell everybody, listen, a calendar is an astronomical problem. Okay? It's an astronomical problem. How many revolutions the moon makes around the earth makes around the sun, when do we see the new crescent? This is astronomy. There's no fiqh in this. There is no tafsir in this. This is pure astronomy. Now, I go to the fuqaha and I say, fuqaha, you want a lunar calendar? They tell me. It's not for me to decide, oh, Muslim ummah, no more lunar calendar, solar calendar now. It's not up to me. Yes? So I ask, do you want a lunar calendar? They say, of course, lunar calendar, because we have ayahs and hadiths and this and that. Okay, good. Fuqaha, I ask you a second question. This is the key question. Do you want a calendar that is based on crescent first visibility, which we can calculate now? We can calculate when the crescent will first be visible. And that will be the start of the month. Is that your definition? Or is the definition of the lunar calendar for you, O fuqaha, is when the moon starts its new cycle around the earth? There's a delay and the difference. The second one is actually easier to calculate and sharper, and then we don't have all kinds of disputes. The second one is a little bit more complicated, but it can be done. We debate, can we have a calendar that is unified for the entire world, or does it have to be bizonal, which is the one I suggested and defend. So you see, I am asking the fuqaha to give me their definition. It's for them to decide. Do you want hilal calendar, or do you want moon calendar? And they say, some of them, they say, we want moon calendar, finished with all of this. And some of them, they say, no, it has to be hilal. What's wrong with you? Sumu li ru'yatihi, aftiru li ru'yatihi, there are clear hadiths. What's wrong with you? I say, okay, no problem, don't get upset, no problem. So you want hilal calendar? Then I do the calculations for hilal calendar here. This is the contribution and how I don't need to have a degree in fiqh. I don't have to have a degree in hadith. I don't have to have a degree in Islamic studies. I ask them, they tell me what they want, I do the calculations. Islam, cosmology. Cosmology, how did the universe evolve from t equals 0 to today? Universe as a whole. This is science. I am sorry, I'm not going to find this in some hadiths or find it in some fiqh books or even in some tafsir. This is science. I teach this and I can do all the equations and the calculations and here's the evidence and the observations and full science. And then I go to the mufassirin. I say, let me explain to you the cosmology that we understand today. Some of it is absolutely solid, very solid. We are not going to change our mind next year, I guarantee. Don't be afraid. And then you go and, as Dr. Bagir said earlier, now it will help me understand these verses a little bit better. So it's not for me to get a degree in tafsir. It is for them to understand why it is for them to understand this cosmology as a science, and then say, okay, now I have a new tafsir, I have a better understanding. It doesn't mean everything was wrong before. It means we now have updated our knowledge, the quality of the knowledge that Zain was talking about a moment ago. Yes? Because this topic is a science topic. That's why it's for me to develop the topic and for them to learn it. Now, if I go to them and I say, I want to understand this idea of how we divide inheritance. If I die, how much money goes to my wife and to my children and this and that? Now, it's their knowledge that I need, because this is not natural science. It's not for me to tell them, no, we should divide it as, 0.37 goes to my wife, 0.24 goes to my son, say, what are you bringing this? I say, because I have better statistics. So this is not for statistics. This is from fiqh and hadith. You understand the point? So in each case, you have to go back and say, what kind of knowledge are we talking about? If it is natural science, physical knowledge, then it is for the scientists to develop and present to everybody. And everybody has to learn it. You learn it from the videos, people learn it from the books, they learn it in some conferences, but they learn it from the scientists. If it is something that is pure fiqh, or it is pure hadith, then we go to the fuqaha and we go to the muhaddithin. and we say, okay, explain to me, this hadith is strong or not strong? You accept it? It is accepted by all the madhab or not? And then they have their own knowledge. We take from them. Is it clearer now?
Yes, is it clear? But let me give a follow-up.
Yes.
The problem is in Indonesia. Yes, the astronomer have difficulties in transfer the observation result to the fuqaha, the ulama.
We all have, not just in Indonesia. Trust me. Trust me. I've been dealing with this for 30 years.
So that then our problem is about the communication.
Yes.
The methods.
But I'll tell you why. Sorry to interrupt. I'll tell you why. Because in the education system of the fuqaha, they did not get at least basics of astronomy, of biology, so they understand what does it mean that there is abortion, what does it mean that there is death, or there is, development of the embryo, and there is selection of sex, and there is genetic modification. They need to learn the basics, or otherwise tomorrow they will be talking nonsense. And that's the problem. We try to explain to them some astronomy. They have no understanding of what is the difference between the moon and the planet. What is the difference between the sun and the moon? They don't know. That's why we find difficulty communicating.
Thank you very much for the answer.
Oke, terima kasih. Aplaus ya. Baik, diskusi kita saya rasa sangat menarik, tapi kita punya keterbatasan waktu. Jadi semoga kita diskusi ini telah membukakan mata kita betapa banyak yang masih bisa kita lakukan untuk menemukan keselarasan antara sains dan Islam. Terima kasih teman-teman semua, terima kasih Profesor. Thank you Profesor Guessoum. Thank you Dr. Zainal. I close this with Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Back to you.
Terima kasih. Oke, sebelumnya Bu mungkin ada sedikit pemberian souvenir. We have a small gift for you, from Mizan. Ini akan diberikan oleh salah satu editor kami di Mizan, oleh Mas Panji Haryadi. Silakan.
Okay, remove this. Okay.
Oke, jadi teman-teman, dan setelah ini kita akan ada foto bersama dengan Profesor Guessoum, jadi mohon teman-teman masih bisa tetap di tempat ya. Oke, can you move forward? Yes. Oke. Dan Instagram Penerbit Mizan dan di YouTube Mizan Publishing ya. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, kita foto dulu ya teman-teman ya.